Today in lesson E5, we are going to be talking about proportional relationships. Now, we've already talked about what is a proportion. A proportion is when we have two equal fractions. So when we are talking about a proportional relationship, usually we are going to be talking about having these two fractions equal to each other. And a lot of times, just like yesterday, we sometimes will have an unknown, and that will be so one of the things we're going to talk about today is we're going to be comparing distances. So we are going to be looking at data from Fargo to popular cities, and we're going to draw a graph, write an equation. So again, we'll talk about our equation like yesterday, and then we'll look at the relationship between both miles and kilometers, and you're going to see an interesting number that keeps popping up. So what we are going to take a look at is we are going to be taking a look at these different cities, and we notice that for Minneapolis, if we're going from Fargo to Minneapolis, it's 230 miles, 379 kilometers. Chicago, we see the distance in miles and kilometers. Sioux Falls, Bismarck, Billings, Winnipeg. When we get down to Omaha, we only see the distance listed in miles and not kilometers. And in Denver, we see kilometers and not miles. And so this is what we are going to be looking at, trying to fill in as we are looking at this data. So as we do this, what we want to do is we are going to be taking a look at some of the different points on our graph. So first thing we are going to do is we're going to plot 6 points from our data table, and X is going to represent the miles and Y is going to represent kilometers. Now, the thing is, you're going to notice is you kind of have to turn back and forth. So I am going to have you plot these points. So as we look at the points, we are going to see, and I'm just going to kind of write them right down here to the side. It was Minneapolis was 235, to 379. We had, so plot the point, you're going to have 643 to 1035. We have 245 for Sioux Falls to 395. We are going to have 196, so 196 kilometers to 315. And I'm going to pause the video in just a minute so we can plot these. We also had 609 to 980. And our last one that you are going to plot was 222 and to 357. So please make sure, and I'll just have you pause the video for a little bit and you're going to plot these points. So one of the first things we see after we've plotted our points is it says, well, what's the pattern or shape that we see for these points on our graph? And what we'd really do is if we think about these starting out, is that we could almost make a straight line through those points. So we could really make a straight, my pen is not working well this morning, a straight line. And sometimes it's going to be best to take a ruler and actually draw this straight line. So we are going to take, and we are looking at this and taking a line and going straight through. So connect the points in our pattern. And what we know is now it says, well, how could we use a graph to approximate our two unknown distances? Remember, our two unknown distances were, we know that we are going 424 miles, and we're trying to find the kilometers. And we also know that we went 1,374 kilometers, and we're trying to find our miles. So this was our miles, here was our kilometers. So if we are looking at 424, now remember this is going to be an approximation, but if we're going to 424, we might say, okay, here's 450, so about 425, and we're going to go up from that point, and it looks like it's a little less than 700. So maybe we say 680 or 690, right? So 680 or 690. We're not really sure. Again, it's just approximating this point, right? And then the next one is we're going to go to 1374. So 1374, it's off our graph, right? So we know for sure if we were going to maybe extend our line, right? And we can do that. And you could also, so if I take it and I keep going along that same line, I might see that 13, so this is 11, 12, 1300 is going to be like up here. And now I'm going to go across from that point, right? And what, maybe like 800 if we are looking at that. So maybe around 1300, about 800 for this point down here. So as we are looking at those two, we might say it's approximately 800. And at this point, those are just approximations using our graph, not always the best. Now what we want to do is we want to find the ratio. Now, again, finding that rate, we are going to take our kilometers and divide it by distance. So we are going to take 235 on your calculators and divide by 379. So, just the opposite, right? We do not want to put in our miles first. We want to put in kilometers. So we're going to go 379 in your calculator divided by 235. And I want you to round it to the nearest tenth, okay? To the nearest tenth. So you put that in, 1.6 approximately. And we'd say that is kilometers using our units per mile. And again, you're going to do that with each one of these. So please do that division and write in your numbers. And then in just a minute after you've looked at those, I'm going to have the sub pause the video right now. I want you to do those calculations and see if you start seeing a pattern. And what you should be noticing is that when we put miles, and so in this case, remember we were looking at always kilometers per mile. And what we found was that it was 1.6 kilometers per 1 mile. So if I know the miles, just like yesterday, so I'm in our proportion, I'm going to put 424 down here. That's my miles. And this is going to be what I don't know, x. So how am I going to solve this? Well, what do I take times 1 to get 424? I multiply it by 424. We are going to take 424 times 1.6 to get our answer. So please put that in your calculator. And as you do that, you get about 690. And that is how we're solving for that one. And in this next one, if we look at it, and again, we want to think of our proportion. We have 1.6 kilometers to 1 mile. And this time we know that this is 1374 kilometers. And we are looking to x miles. We don't know how many miles. So what are we going to do this time? We're going to multiply across. We're going to take, if we are looking at this, we are going to take 1.6 times x. So we're going to have 1.6x is going to be equal to 1374. So in order to solve, we're going to divide both sides by 1.6. And again, if you need to pause the video, so here we're going to take 1374 and divide it by 1.6 because our rate is still 1.6 for these. And when you do that division, it should come out to be around 800. Might be a little more, might be a little less, but it's going to be pretty close to that. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about our equations. And we did a lot of talk on this yesterday. If we know kilometers per every mile, this is going to be our constant rate of change as we think about that. So it says, how can we change x miles to y kilometers using variables, writing an equation? And this is what we are going to be looking at. If we are going to write those, we are going to simply be looking at putting that shows how they're related, always remembering that this was our dependent variable equals our rate, which was 1.6 times, and our independent variable. So once we have our equation, what's nice about that is once we have our equation, it says, well, how can we use that to help us find it? We kind of did that with our proportions, but in this case, we're going to say, okay, when we know x is equal to 424, the miles, y equals 1.6 times 424, and we should have 678.4 kilometers. Pretty close to what we guessed. If we're doing it the other way, what we know is that y was equal to 1374. And so we're going to go to our equation. In place of the y, we're going to put 1374 is equal to 1.6 times x. And just as we did ours, we're going to do our division. And when you do your division, we are going to find x is equal to, in this case. And so if you were dividing 1374 divided by 1.6, it comes out to be 858.75. So we could say about 858 miles. So those of you, if you did that over here, this is also, we said in our graph, 800. This was also 858 as you were filling that in. So as we look at these different things, we are now going to take a look at the graph down below. And it says, as we looked at that, this was our equation, y equals 1.6x for our dots. It says, why does the line go through the origin? And if we are looking at that, the reason is because at 0 miles, we've also gone 0 kilometers. It says, why is there an arrow at the top and not at the bottom end? And the reason that it's at the top is that we cannot have negative miles. We can't drive negative miles. You can't have negative, so no negative kilometers. But if we are comparing them, the reason we have the arrow at the top is because it's going to continue on and on and on, and we can have more positive values, okay? So we can always have more positive values if we are looking at that. Tonight in your assignment, so there's one more page of notes. If you turn to that last page in your notes, it says Josie and Jim are hosting sculpture contests, which could be about now. It's supposed to be, what, 10 below. They buy ice. They give 5 blocks of ice for $143.75 or 3 for $87. Which store has a better deal? So again, what are we looking at? We want to look at the price, dollars, per block. So please figure out each one for me. We're going to take the $143.75. And remember, keep your labels per 5 blocks. So figure out what is that unit rate. And then our other one is $87.75 divided by the 3 blocks. Pause the video if you need to. Please do those 2 calculations. And what you should have found is that better buy is going to be Iggy's. And the reason is it came out to be $28.75 per block. Where Bob's happened to be $29.25 a block. So it costs more. It asks you to write an equation. X is the block, Y is the total cost. So I'd like you to do that and then pause the video. We're going to do one for Iggy. We're going to do one for Bob. Should be Y equals rate of change, 28.75x, 29.75x. If people are having a hard time getting these written down, please pause the video so that they can get them written down. As you take a look, your homework tonight is going to be doing lesson E5. So you have questions 1 through I believe 4 on that page. And right now we are going to take a quiz, and the quiz is actually from E3, and you can do this quiz with a partner. So I'm going to have the sub hand out a piece of paper. You're going to talk quietly with your shoulder partner, and please put quiz E3. I want you to write an equation for this graph, and then I want you to tell me which store has a better buy, or are they the same? And if you need to, I will have some hard copies of this so that you can take a look. Key thing here is if you're looking at this point was at 4, 2. This point is at 2, 1. If you're looking here, this was at 6, just so in case you can't see those. So I will put that up. This one was at 4, 2. This point was at 6, 3. So if you couldn't see those points, that might help you to answer which one is a better buy or if they are the same. And I hope you have a good day, and thanks.